Wikingpowa! This is Wikingpowa, aka Uncle Kent, and this is my kitchen table. Welcome. When you come to the kitchen table, there's all kinds of things that you do. Last episode, we did a little drinking and storytelling, looking at some good whiskeys. Sometimes it'll involve eating some good meals. I made a good meal the other day, and I'm showing you a pic here now. And sometimes when you come around the kitchen table, it's for one of those talks. I remember my mom, she'd say, "Hey, Kent, come in here and sit down. I want to talk to you." And then she'd proceed to have one of those talks. I'm hoping to have a talk with you guys today. Not going to be negative, but it's going to be kind of serious. There is a lot of negativity going on right now in this shutdown. People are tired of it. People are stressed, worried about their jobs, worried about their finances, all kinds of things to be negative about. You see it on social media. You see it in the political realm. I don't really want to focus on that negativity. There's enough of that going around. And I don't want to just be a person who only looks at the positive and never looks at the negative. I do want to focus on how we can be productive. It's really easy to burn things down. I've told my students this many times. It's really easy to burn stuff down. I remember this story of when I was in grad school in Michigan. I was working on my master's, and Carmen was working full-time as a nurse, and I had an assistantship. I was going full-time as a student, like extra time. I finished in like one complete calendar year. And she drove the car to work, and I rode a bike. We kind of lived on campus, and I remember one morning getting on my bike and riding to class and then also to work in the English department. At the end of the day, I rode the bike home. And when I rode the bike home and got by my house, I looked over across the street. And in the morning, there was a house there. In the evening, when I got home, the house had burnt to the ground. I didn't really know who the guy was. I think he might have lost a kid, and he lost his dog in that fire. And that morning, it was all there. That's one of those painful life lessons. It takes a while to build that house, and then in a moment, it can be burnt down. It's easy to burn stuff down. It takes time to build. There's lots of arsonists in the world. We don't need more arsons. Notre Dame got burnt down in Paris. What a tragedy. It's easy to burn it down. How are you going to build it back up? We can apply that to all kinds of things. It's easy to ruin your body through drugs and alcohol, and it can happen fast. It takes time to build your body up. A lot more of us need to focus on building, and that's what I'm concerned with. That's what this episode's about. We're going to be faced with a rebuilding of our lives in some capacity or other. There's no getting around it. Unemployment's going to be high. The economy's going to be really struggling. There's all kinds of issues. People are going to be rethinking how they conduct business in the United States of America and also in the world. But my concern is mainly with us, with our family here in the United States. We're going to have a time to rebuild. There's no question about it. And you can look at it as a negative because we might have to build things back up from where they were, but you can also look at it as an opportunity. It might be an opportunity to start over from a pattern that wasn't necessarily the best pattern. And there's going to be all kinds of ways that we can do this. People are going to be rethinking education, higher education, secondary education, primary education. People are going to be rethinking those things. People are going to be rethinking the workforce. They're going to be rethinking where they're going to work, how they're going to work. Are they going to work in the office every day, or are they going to work from home sometimes? We're going to be rethinking those things. I said in one of my earlier episodes, talking about leaving the city, I've already seen articles out there. There's one in National Review. I'm showing a link to that right now. And it's already talking about people rethinking living in cities. It might not be the best way of life. This time to rebuild I want to view it as an opportunity. I view it as a time to do some weeding. Get out the things that are unnecessary and try to give room for everything else to grow. I remember when I first planted grass seed in my big property of like close to 7-8 acres, and the weeds just took over the first part because there wasn't much grass. But the more grass that I got grown into the property, the less room there was for the weeds. You still have to treat the weeds, but it's not as hard to treat those weeds. It's easier to just maintain them. It's the same thing. If you plant good stuff and you get it going, it's going to take care of itself, but you still have to weed the garden sometimes. This is an opportunity, I think, for us to weed the garden. If we are going to rebuild, if we are going to think about different ways that we can do things, we're going to have to ask some questions about life. What is life? What is not life? A great writer, Henry David Thoreau, some people like him, some people don't, but you cannot ignore the significance of his book, Walden. Walden was deeply influential on me. I remember reading Walden, Ecclesiastes, Our Town by Thornton Wilder. In Henry David Thoreau's Walden, he's asking some fundamental questions. He's asking what is life and what is not life. And what he does is he goes on an experiment. He goes and lives out in the woods for about a year. He's not trying to do a wilderness survival type of thing. People often misunderstand what that work's about. What he's trying to do is he's trying to get life, as he calls it, into a corner. And he wants to suck the marrow out of life. He wants to figure out what life is and what life isn't. The time that he spent out there, he realized there's a lot of things that are not life. He says our life is frittered away by details. Simplify. Instead of 3 meals a day, eat but one if it be necessary. And reduce other things in proportion. When he comes out after a year from this experiment, he has a very different viewpoint on what life is and what life isn't. And the whole reason, it's about sucking the marrow out of life. It's about making the most of our lives. And the thing that he was focused on was his life as an individual. A lot of Americans don't understand what their life is all about right now. There's a lot of confusion. Our job is to serve the government. Our job is to do what we're told to do. No, that's not the purpose of the citizen's life in the United States of America. The United States was built on the idea of the individual. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness for the individual. In the Declaration of Independence, it talks about the purpose of government. And the purpose of government is to secure the rights of the individual. And when the government no longer serves the ends of securing the rights of the individual, and securing means to go out and get them and to make sure that they're protected. And when the government no longer does this, it is the right and the obligation of the people to put a new government in place that will serve those purposes. And then when you go to the Bill of Rights, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the first 4 of them, I talk with my students about this all the time, the first 4 of them are all about individual rights, not even the rights of the group of the family. It goes down to the individual. I heard Michael Malice talking about this on an episode. Sometimes people think the family is the smallest unit in American society. It isn't. It's the individual. The individual's right to free speech. The individual's right to freedom of thought and religion and the press to write and publish what they want to publish. The individual's right in the Second Amendment to defend themselves with arms if necessary. The individual's right in the Third Amendment to protect their house as an owner. The individual's right in the Fourth Amendment against illegal searches and seizures of their persons, their effects, which includes a phone and these types of things. Now, another work that, a literary work that I said was deeply influential on me was Our Town by Thornton Wilder. I remember reading that in my sophomore English class in college. Dr. McClarty, this really unusual lady with crazy, frizzed up hair and all kinds of energy. I remember reading this play and then watching it, and I didn't get what it was about, and she helped me to understand it. Once I finally understood it, it had a dramatic effect on my life. I realized that maybe there's a lot of things I was doing in my life that wasn't really life. I was wasting time. And I'm sure if we all did a little inventory, there's all kinds of things that we do to waste our time. It's not really living. It's not really life. One of the main themes of that play, Our Town, is that people take life for granted. They take life for granted. They don't live what's most important, and they spend a good share of their time on the things that are least important. So what's important in your life? What's essential in your life? In the play Our Town, it basically divides people's lives into three basic parts. The first act of the play is on daily life. The daily life, you've got two families, one family on one side of the stage, another family on another side of the stage, and we get to watch them go through their morning routine. And when we watch them go through their morning routine and then their afternoon routine and their evening routine, we find that it's very similar. Most of our lives, the stuff that takes up every day and the biggest bulk of our life is the daily life, the routine. It only takes a short amount of time to win a championship. And then what happens? A couple hours, few hours, it's over. And then you're back to the grind of practice. And practice is what takes up most of the time. Off-field preparation in the off-season, all those types of things. That's the routine. And what Our Town stresses, if you can't find a happiness in the routine and the daily life, you're missing a big chunk of what life is all about. The second act in Our Town focuses on love and marriage and family. Most people find the need to get together with somebody else and to cement themselves in a new family that kind of replicates the one that they came from in some fashion or other. And so family is the second part, love and marriage and family, and then procreation and kids and leaving a legacy. The last act of Our Town focuses on death, and it starts with the stage manager of the story sitting in the cemetery, and all the people are there, and they're not dead. Their souls are waiting for the eternal part to come out. It's not a theological play, but it says something's eternal about human beings. And it's a big idea in the story. But he says the cemetery is an important part of Our Town. Everyone eventually is going to die, even the most important people. I remember a poem by Percy Shelley called Ozymandias, and some of you have probably heard this poem before or read it before. I'm going to read it to you real quickly here. And it's a sonnet, so it's not very long. And it's about this great emperor in Egypt. And it's called Ozymandias. I met a traveler from an antique land who said 2 vast and trunkless legs of stone stand in the desert. Near them on the sand, half sunk a shattered visage lies, whose frown and wrinkled lip and sneer of cold command tell that its sculptor well those passions read, which yet survive, stamped on these lifeless things, the hand that mocked them, and the heart that fed, and on the pedestal these words appear. My name is Ozymandias, King of Kings. Look on my works, ye mighty, and despair. Nothing beside remains. Round the decay of that colossal wreck, boundless and bare, the lone and level sands stretch far away. You have this great emperor that sends fear into people, and he has power over life and death. But eventually he dies. Years later, he's absolutely forgotten. Let's be honest. I just finished a book about Vladimir Lenin and Woodrow Wilson. Good book, 1917, The Birth of the New World Disorder. Good book. Really good. Highly recommend it. Not many people know much about Lenin. Not many people know much about Stalin or Mao Zedong. But when they were alive, they were among the most powerful humans on earth. The power over life and death. And they died and they were forgotten. That's the nature of things. For all of us, even the greatest. You'll not be here 200 years from now. But you're here now. Today is all you have. When tomorrow gets here, it will be called today. It will be now. What are you doing today? What are you doing now? I tell my students, I tell my family, you can always figure out what people really love. It's not that hard. It really isn't. If you want to figure out what people really love, watch how they spend their time and their money. Time and money. If you love your kids a lot, well, guess what? You're going to be spending your time with them, and you're going to be spending your money on them. If you say, oh, I love you kids, I love you so much, and all you do is spend your money on yourself, well, you probably don't love your kids that much, and you're lying. You can figure things out. Who are you? That's a big question. Who am I? Really, be honest. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? What are you doing right now? And what should you be doing? Only you can answer these questions. I can't answer them for you. It's your life. Your life as an individual. I can answer for myself, but you got to answer it for yourselves. Don't lie. People lie all the time. We start young. It's not my fault. I didn't do anything. I'm listening as you're on your phone. Oh, yeah, I'm listening. I wouldn't change a thing, not one thing. Oh, I ran a 4.2 in high school. Oh yeah, I hit 98. I used to throw gas. Yeah, people lie all the time. And that's why we have radar guns in sports to figure out, and then you have to get it with video. And even that can be manipulated. That's why we follow stats. Figure out what the reality is. That's why we use laser times to figure out 40s. Don't lie. It's not an advantage to yourself. I mean, it may be temporarily, but in the long run, it's going to be a disadvantage to you. When you're looking at your strengths and your weaknesses, it's hard. It's hard sometimes. Did I do something wrong? I'm sorry. How can I do better? That isn't necessarily fun, but it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity to grow. When you do this evaluation of yourself, you're trying to figure out, honestly, what are my strengths and my weaknesses? We often focus on the wrong things. Sometimes you have to work hard on correcting weaknesses. But sometimes you can't really correct them that much. You're going to have to learn how to operate with them. And then you're going to have to look at your strengths, and hopefully your strengths can make up for some of your weaknesses. I mean, the way I'd like to think of it is like, let's say you're in the 90th percentile in writing. You're just really, really phenomenal at writing, but you're in the 30th percentile in math. What do we do so often when kids are young? And as we keep going, what do we often do? We focus on the thing that we're so bad at. We focus on, we got to improve this thing that we're bad at. And I get that. But sometimes you just have to cut your losses and just say, hey, that's just not what I'm great at. I got to be honest about it. I'm not going to make up stories about it and say I'm good at it when I'm not. And then you have to focus on what you're really good at, and how good are you at the thing that you're saying that you're good at. A good example of this is John Lester. Real good example. One of the greatest pitchers in baseball history, you could say. Won 2 World Series with the Red Sox, and then was the pinnacle piece, or the fundamental piece, in building a championship for the Chicago Cubs. When they started to really piece together this championship caliber team, John Lester was key. And John Lester can't throw to first base. My kids can throw to first base. I know a lot of high school baseball players that can throw to first base. He just has the hardest time in the world throwing to first base. It's a major flaw. A lot of people want to focus on his inability to throw to first base, and I love it. I love it, because it's a constant reminder to me that you can be great, phenomenal at something, the number one pitcher on the number one team, and you have a gigantic flaw. When you start realizing this and focusing on this, guess what? Things can change for you. Things can change. You're going to start focusing on building up those strengths a lot more and cut your losses on some of those things that are weaknesses. And just face it, you may not ever get better. And then all the time and energy you focus on those things that you're not good at, you could be spending on perfecting what you're really good at. And you might be able to change the world with that. The next part of what I want to talk to you about is investing in yourself as an individual. And this is one of the last things I'm going to talk to you about in this particular episode. That may sound selfish, investing in yourself. You know, I'm hesitant when I hear those kinds of things, but it's absolutely necessary. There's times in your life when you're going to need to invest in yourself more than others. And I would say, by and large, it's when you're younger. That's what I'm going to deal with in the next episode. But when you invest in yourself, it's not being selfish. You can view it as preparation for what you'll be doing in the future. I got a great example of this. When you look at the story of Jesus in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and I've read it many times, very influential on me, the Gospels. There's a period in my life where I just read them over and over. One of those things that's really interesting about the life of Jesus is there's not much about the early years of Jesus. There's a little bit, but not much. Basically, everything that we know about Jesus is when he hits like 30 or somewhere around there. What's going on in those early years? Well, I think I know. It was his preparation. He wasn't focusing on his public ministry of helping people and doing all kinds of things out there. He was focusing on maximizing himself as a person so that when he would be needed and called upon to serve in this greater way where he'd have to pour himself out completely, he'd be ready. The vessel would be full. He wouldn't have to be a fractured self as a middle-aged person still trying to figure out, who am I? He already knew. He already knew what his calling was. And so he could pour himself out. And I think that's a great example. It's never too late, really. The last couple of years have been really hard in my family. We had 6 kids in my family. I've lost 2 of my siblings. And way before their time. My brother Don, and who was 64 when he passed, and my sister Wendy, both passed away from pancreatic cancer. Wendy in particular I want to focus on. She chose a different path on how to fight it. She didn't do chemo. She tried to do an all natural route, and she had very serious cancer. And it was kind of surprising how long she was able to last. She lasted close to 3 years with pancreatic cancer without taking chemo or radiation or any of that stuff. In that time, a lot of us went down to see her, and she did a whole lot of living in 2.5 years. I remember passing by her bed one time I was visiting her, and she's sitting in there, and we were all out in their great room and talking and laughing and telling stories and having a good time, and she was just sitting in bed, and she was just kind of smiling, and she didn't have the strength to get up. And so I go in the bedroom and I say, "Hey, you doing all right?" And she's sitting there and she had a smile on her face, and she says, "I was just listening. I was just listening to the laughter. I was listening to the stories." And then I sat down and talked to her, and then she started to pour her heart out to me. And one of the things she said is, I was a terrible mother. She realized this last part of her life. She realized I wasted so many years. And I said to her, "Wendy, well, you didn't waste these last 2. You've been a good mom, you've been a good sister, you've been all kinds of things to all kinds of people in these last couple of years." And did that give her some satisfaction? I think so. Not a lot. Doesn't make up for the regret, but there is satisfaction. I watched my brother Don too alienated so many people in his life through drugs and alcohol and other choices that he made. And he found out he had pancreatic cancer. 4 weeks later, he was dead. But in those 4 weeks, he was able to make amends with everybody in his family. And when he passed, we were all together. It's never too late. Never. You can start working today. As I start to wrap this up, is invest in your whole self. A lot of self-help people out there, they focus on your body. If you get into fitness, your life's gonna be better. Well, your body might be better. But what about your mind? What about the rest of yourself? I saw this guy on Twitter, self-help guy, I forget his name, but he made a really good observation. Your mind and your body are in the same house. They're together. Work on both those things. I said, that's smart, that's wise. But there's an even wiser thing. If you want to be at peak performance, well, don't just focus on the body, don't just focus on the mind, focus also on your spirit, on your soul as well. Because humans are mind, body, and soul. Focus on that whole person. If you want to strengthen your body, well, do strength training, lift weights, work on your mobility, work on your cardio, work on your diet, get rest. If you want to strengthen your mind, read, write, talk, listen to podcasts like this one. If you want to improve your soul, if you want to strengthen your soul, pray. Pray. Go to church. Go to Mass. Read your Bible. Read spiritual books. Talk about it with other people. And your soul will get strengthened. And when you do all those things, you become a more balanced person. And when you become a more balanced person, you're stronger. And you're better able to do what is most important in this world. And what's most important in this world is to serve. And that's going to be the focus of my next episode. It's going to be on service and the stages of life. So, hey, I appreciate you guys listening. I know it's a little bit more serious, a little maybe somber in some ways, but I hope it was in some way helpful to you guys. And cheers and blessings.